us right now. That you are going to lead us and guide us. We look to you, Holy Spirit.
A wild child.
God brought us together.
I'm in the presence of God. He had kept inviting me to the church.
The enemy trying to snatch him right in front of him. You know, he changed colors. You know, I called his name and he gasped for air and came back.
Healing is contagious.
Yeah.
Good health is contagious.
Yeah.
Made the appeals for salvation.
Our wedding day was nothing short of a disaster.
I began to speak, man. I mean, the Holy Ghost just came on me.
Your family's like a mosaic. Yeah, that's good. That's cool.
I see a vision inside of me.
And just as I went to go, it's hard to describe, but I heard a voice say, wait.
He shared the gospel with me, and it was powerful.
You know, we're both ministers, we're pastors at Discovery Church in Jacksonville, and this particular work was started when I was 1 year old. That means my entire life has been connected with this particular local work. And I would have grown up in the church. Jesus would have been my friend at a very young age.
Wow.
But I would have grown up involved, knowing him almost in every aspect of my life. And so my come to Jesus story is very different than a lot of people's. And it may not seem that amazing, but it's the story I want. It's the story I want for our kids.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know, I don't want them to have to live through 30 years of hell before they begin to experience heaven.
Amen.
And so I'm thankful for that. And my parents had a very powerful conversion and a few years prior to my birth. And I would have heard theirs a gazillion times growing up in church and with them being ministers. They were
Business people.
They were business people.
Successful.
My dad has always been a hard worker. And at 16, ironically, he would have dropped out of school because he had to give a book report in front of the class. And it's really ironic that someone like that would be a minister. And their life would be, spent teaching people from a platform.
Mm-hmm.
But he was always a hard worker. Repaired shoes. He was a shoe cobbler by trade, and at that point in his life, even being young, he apprenticed and bought the business from a gentleman who was retiring. And so he's 18, 19, runs his own business, does well at it, has skill, has built up a reputation doing it over the years. They started working a lot earlier back then. Maybe not when he was 8, but I want to say he was, working 12 and 13. Yeah. And as soon as he could drive, he was traveling up and down the coast, repairing military boots and different things as the business he worked for at the time grew. But what that meant was that you begin to have, the more money you make, sometimes the more options you have. It doesn't necessarily make you happy, but it allows you to try more things. But even at a young age, they had a level of success, especially for their age. They would have had freedom with running their own business and having their own, skill sets. And they would have even picked up habits. I want to say that during the time of their conversion, whenever God found them, or whenever they found God, however you want to word it, because it's not like he didn't know where they were.
Yeah.
They were the ones that were looking for him. That my dad had a $800 a week cocaine habit. My mom was $500 a week. And that's in like 79, 80. That's more than having an $800 cocaine habit now.
Yeah, weed, speed, all of that.
And I know that for my dad, one of the things, even though he had achieved a certain level of success, and even for my mom, they would have bought a house, they would have done some of these different things that their success would have allowed them.
She always wanted the boat that she always wanted.
Yep. And she summered on a lake when she was a girl, and there was a certain boat that she always wanted when she was younger. And at 18, 19, she's able to buy it, and she's driving down the river. She's driving down the river, and she remembers kind of looking over and thinking, is this all there is to this? That it's not that the boat's not fun, and boats can be fun, but when you think that's going to make you happy, and you think that, if I get that boat, it's going to change everything, and you realize it doesn't, that's a powerful moment. Most people are disappointed in that, but for her, she was definitely disappointed. And I think one of her thoughts as she's processing this is, I can't tell Rick this. We just spent way too much money on this boat. I can't tell him that I'm not happy with it. And for him, he would have been looking for God. He would have been driving down the road, and he was telling my mom, he said, you know what? I think we should maybe start going to church. And that's all he knew as far as finding God. And my mom was pretty quiet. She said that when he said that, she was looking out the window and thought, you can give up your drugs and stuff if you want, but I'm not doing it. They would have had some weekend, I don't know, maybe not a weekend, who knows, but they would have been going out for the night. They were going to go see some friends, they were going to party, and they went to this place, a friend's house, but there ended up being some other people there, some other business owners and things, and they were a business owner. And you have things that you do that not everybody knows about, and they specifically passed over this party because there were people there that they didn't want to know their business. They didn't want to know what they did, and that's what we were going to be doing tonight, so we're just going to pass on that one. And so they end up having maybe their own party at home, but it ends up being a later night. My mom always said there wasn't a drug that's been made or invented that could keep my dad alive or awake. And so, he takes whatever, and he's passed out at the end of the night on the couch. Well, she's exactly the opposite. Everything keeps her awake, which half of the things are supposed to. And so, she's high, and she can't go to sleep. And back then, in 1980, when it got late, there's only 3 stations on. It's not like
television.
It's not like now where it's 1,000 channels all the time.
Yeah.
And so stations start going off. I don't know. Did you guys ever watch TV and the national anthem come on and?
Yeah.
It's like, this is the end of our broadcast day.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
So there's 3 stations.
3 stations on. One of them was the horror movies, and they were showing bees, and my mom was she just didn't like horror films.
She's like, that's not gonna be good.
That's gonna make me afraid. She she had seen The Exorcist not long before,
Yeah.
maybe a couple of years before, and she thought she was possessed for years, and so she's like, I can't watch a horror film. And so the other one may have been some type of infomercial or something. Either way, she wasn't interested. And then the other one that was available was Christian programming, and someone on there was talking about Bob Dylan specifically. So she was a big fan of Bob Dylan's.
And she says, let me see what these Christians have to say about Bob Dylan. I might need to defend him.
Yeah, stops to defend him because you can't trust those Christians. And so she stops to hear what they have to say. He's going to defend, one of her heroes, one of
the people she enjoys and admires, and
yeah.
And they were talking about him and how he had all the money he could ever want, and the houses and the women and the things and the stuff, and still wasn't satisfied, still wasn't happy, still something missing.
And she said, that's how I feel. I don't have all the houses, but I got the house I always wanted. I don't have all the cars, but I got the car I always wanted. I got the boat I always wanted. And that's just how I feel.
Yeah.
And I think, that's one of the things that's important. I mean, even as in our culture where we have access to lots of things, how many times do we have to get something that we think is going to make us happy and it not, before we realize things aren't going to make us happy?
Yeah, come on. Yeah.
But the Christian programming was saying how only one thing can make you happy. And she doesn't remember, she doesn't remember necessarily saying a particular prayer with them. At a certain point, she kind of tuned out. She was having these thoughts and ended up even just having a short conversation with God. And she said, God, if you're really real and you can do something with me, then take me. And that was her prayer. And she said instantly she sobered up.
Yeah.
Just became aware of the shift.
Yeah, and from the TV.
Yep. And above the TV there was a fog, almost like steam, like you'd see if you were boiling water. And two beams of light came out. She says they're, about the size of a man's arm, and they came out and just hit her right in the chest. And she says, she didn't know what was going on, but she said she just felt like black stuff was coming out. She just felt like it was cleaning her. And so as that's going on, she actually gets up and goes to the front of the TV. And at some point, no telling how long she's there, she's having an encounter with God. At some point, my dad wakes up.
Comes and checks on her.
He from the couch, and he sees her, what he says is this far away from the TV. And he's like, oh, she's tripping. I'm going to go to bed. And so he goes to bed. At a certain point, she's going upstairs. She's had an encounter with God. And as she's going upstairs, or as she is going to her room, rather, she is just like thinking, what am I going to tell Rick? Even though she was the one that weeks ago was like, I'm not giving this stuff up.
Yeah.
It's like, what am I going to tell Rick?
Right.
And so she said she didn't know, but she went to the room, and so she turned the light on, and she said she was at the jewelry box taking off her chains.
So they wore a lot of gold chains, apparently.
1980, you've seen Mr. T. But so she was taking off her chains, and her gold chains, and she was laying them in the jewelry box. And my dad got up, and depending on who's telling the story, she says that he gets up and gets right in her face and is like, what are you doing with the light on in my eyes? And she says, she just looks at him and begins to cry. And it's like, I found God. And he he broke down and he was like, where did you find him? I have been looking everywhere for him. And she said, I don't know. And she said, I don't even know what to tell you how I knew this at the time. But she said, I know that if you ask him, he won't deny you. And he's like, okay. And he's like, tell me what happened. And she's like, well, I was downstairs, I was on the couch. And he's like, let's go to the couch. And she's like, well, I had this blanket. He's like, give me the blanket. And for him, he didn't necessarily see the steam over the TV or the two beams of light, but he had the same experience inside. He had that surrendering. And so here they are in the middle of the night. And so they're getting their stash box, they're getting different things, they're dumping things down the toilet, they're throwing things in the fire. And they call their parents, which is what every parent wants to hear at 5 o'clock in the morning. But they call them and say, hey, we're going to go to church, today. We need to come over and, we need to tell you some things. Yeah. And so that's how they spend their Sunday morning, waking their parents up and saying, hey, this is what we've been doing. And come to church with us.
Yeah.
And so neither one of them had, families that spent a lot of time at church. It's not that they had never been, but it wasn't necessarily part of their life.
They all went to church.
But they all went to church, and they wanted. Again, sometimes you don't even know sometimes why you know some of the things or why you want to do some of the things other than just like the two beams of light that are shining in you. I can't tell you what's happening except for I feel like black stuff's coming out. And what drives them to instantly want to throw everything in the fire, and what drives them to want to tell their parents all the stuff they've been hiding from their parents, for years, and what drives them to want to go someplace and make it public and,
He does that.
Yeah.
The Spirit of God. His love.
So that would have been about a year and a half before I was born.
Yep. But it's amazing just thinking about that. I was sitting here just so thankful to God because, you're here and you've always known, Jesus, just like you were talking about earlier. And it's amazing because of what happened, what God did in their lives, changed the next generation. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
That's that inheritance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They plowed before you.
Yes.
And now you're plowing before your kids.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And they get their grandparents' inheritance and your inheritance.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely. That's good.
You guys are plowing ground.
I grew up the opposite. I didn't grow up going to church, and my family wasn't they weren't believers, and so I have family. I'm from Jacksonville. I was born here, but I grew up a couple hours away. But we have a lot of family in this area, and so I would travel, to see family here. And I even knew of the church because my cousin was best friends with him growing up. And so I even knew Sterling. We're about 3 years apart. He's 3 years older. And so that's a big age gap when you're younger, But I always noticed him and just thought, wow, I was like, wow, he is amazing. He's perfect, just different, different. And I was always attracted to just what God was doing here in Jacksonville, because I would come and visit the church. I had my grandma that was a part of the church because she lived here, and my aunt and my uncle, and so I would visit. But I never gave my life to the Lord until I was 19 years old, when I came back for, it was a funeral, and Sterling's mother was officiating the funeral, and he was with her. It was for one of my family members. And I met him officially at the funeral, and my life was just in a rough spot. You know, like I said, I grew up not knowing the Lord, and I just grew up just really trying to, I would say, just please other people. I was trying to find acceptance in what, you know, other people thought, you know, get other people's approval. It was not good. And so I got involved in some things that were rough, you know, involved in drugs, especially from once I graduated high school. I spent a lot of time, a lot of energy trying to be awesome in high school. And then high school ended, and I didn't know what to do with my life. And so from that 18 and 19 years old, I went downhill quick and got involved in drugs, really bad relationships. So when we had this funeral, when I came to Jacksonville, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get out of that. You know, I have to. This is terrible. And so I just jumped right in. I came to church the Sunday after the funeral, and I came because I was really, you know, interested in him, you know, and it's like,
good reason.
I know, I was really interested in him. I just dealt with a lot of bad dudes in my life, and I was always following a dude, you know, always following a guy, you know, from when I came of age to do that type of thing. And I was trying to find my acceptance in those relationships. And so once again, you know, I was trying to like follow him, and then it's like I need to be, you know, a good girl, and he goes to church, and so I need to go to church, and so that's what I did. But the Lord, you know, just met me, you know, there at Word of Faith. It used to be called Word of Faith before it was Discovery. He met me there, and I gave my life to the Lord, and it has been a process for me, a huge journey. Those first 10 years of me being saved, maybe a little bit less, were just rough. You know, there was a lot of renewing of the mind. I was pretty stubborn, you know, and he was very, very patient, but very firm. Very firm, like
talking about me or God?
I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you were very firm with just because I was a hot mess, you know, gave my life to the Lord, but there were still a lot of things I was holding on to. Mm-hmm. A lot of habits, a lot of ways of thinking, of, you know, doing things my own way. And so it's almost been, you know, so that was back in 2003. And these last almost 20 years, it's just been the beautiful undoing, and Holy Spirit, you know, walking me through the process and being loving and patient with me, you know, even in the stubbornness, even in the unwillingness to see it. And he has just, transformed me, transformed my life. It's been, I want to say great, but at times, it's great now, but it has been in the past. It could have been really painful. The Lord has delivered me when you know, I talked about chasing relationships with guys. You know, I remember being 16 years old and just doing things I wasn't supposed to, doing things that were for marriage. And my dad found out about it. My biological dad, and he found out about it, and he comes up and he's saying, you're tainted, you're tainted, you're tainted. And that was what I identified with, that I'm tainted. Mm-hmm. And so even when I met Sterling, I'm like, you know, he doesn't deserve a tainted woman. Mm-hmm. You know, I need to be good. I need to be pure. I need to be what he needs me to be. And so the Lord, you know, he met me in that place, and he's taken me, and he's obviously, that's not the right perspective to have, you know, because I was still trying to do it in my own strength, you know, just with outer, you know, actions and behaviors, but the inside, I was still dealing with this identity crisis that, you know what, tainted. It's just a facade, you know, truly, because if he truly knew who I was or what I've been through and the things I've done and the things that have been done to me, you know, he wouldn't want me anymore. And so, man, the Lord has just been so good, because he's taken me to a place where his deliverance, it just goes so deep. It goes all the way. It goes deep, deep, deep to the ugliest, to the nastiest place. His blood has just cleansed me. And so the Lord has showed me, Annie, you are pure. You are cleansed. You are beautiful, all because of Jesus. You are the righteousness of God through Christ Jesus, through my son, and I am pure, and so the way that I see the price that he paid, it's like I really accepted it, because at first I was just faking it. I was trying to be the pure, and so I was even not accepting what he did, because I was trying to do it in my own. But then I came to a point where I've just come to the end of myself, a breaking point, it's just like a turning point. And it's like, no, he got me on this thing, focus on what I did for you. And there was honesty and transparency, and that was all beautiful. And those are hard things, but he's with you through that process and helps you. And it was just so loving, so loving. The things that I was afraid to give the Lord, I was holding on to these things, thinking that he was going to be upset, or he couldn't do it. Oh, he can do it, and he totally did. And it just was a beautiful process. And I can sit here today saying I'm a pure one.
Identity is one of the things that our local body, I think, is
at the church at Discovery
is tasked to share and teach. It's one of the things that we really feel like it's our job and privilege to get to impart with the people that connect.
It's so important. It's foundation. It's not just foundation, it's how you operate from that place in every moment. And it's a mission, it's a mandate.
Another one of the false identities that I think is part of your story is brokenness.
Mm-hmm.
Not brokenness that, not the good brokenness that we experience with him.
There's been plenty of that too. You guys might have noticed walking to the bathroom that there's a nursery off to the right. I don't know if you saw that a little bit, but we have a nursery.
It's not for Cooper. He does
we
go
have a
in there
nursery
and have
set
fun
up.
time.
We call it the baby's room. But whenever I didn't find this out till I was 16 years old, but apparently, I was born without a uterus. And that's what the diagnosis, born without a uterus. I have one ovary, one kidney, and so when I was 16 years old, I went to the doctor, and I actually went because I had a stomach bug or whatever. And so I'm telling the doctors, I've been throwing up, and they're like, when's your last menstrual cycle? And I said, I don't have one. And they took it to be that I missed my menstrual cycle, and I was probably pregnant. And so I'm at a urgent care. And so they actually give me an exam, which was not great. This was really kind of crazy. And they start bringing people in the room. Anyways, a lot of details, but they're looking and things like that. And then they send me out to go sit with my mom, and the doctor comes into the waiting room where just me and my mom are. They have a private waiting room, and the doctor proceeds to tell her this news, that I was, there's no, they found no uterus, there's just some issues. And my mom begins to cry, and my mom's a very private person, and I just had never really seen her cry before. And so I'm like, it's okay, Mom, it's okay, Mom. It's okay, everything's gonna be okay. And I immediately went into that mode that this is gonna be okay. Everything's fine, it's not a big deal. And that's really how I kind of treated it. That really, during that time, a lot of the insecurities, the run into guys, and just the different stuff that I was doing, it just kind of the heat got turned up, just went more after that. But with my parents, I mean, we didn't really talk about it. Just private home, like, let's not talk about it. You know, it made everybody uncomfortable. And so I'm carrying this weight. And then when I come to Word of Faith, you know, at 19 years old, and I hear about Jesus and I get saved, and then I start, you know, I just end up moving here. You know, I'm just like, I'm coming here. You know, I'm leaving here. You know, I was kind of staying at a boyfriend's house, you know, back 2.5 hours away. I break up with him. I move to Jacksonville, and, you know, and I just start learning about Jesus. I start, you know, I'm still a hot mess. It ain't perfect, it ain't pretty, but I'm in the right place. Okay. And so I start learning that Jesus is the healer. And people start hearing things from the Lord and telling me things. And then I start believing, and I mean, I start hearing the truth, and then I start believing that, you know, nothing's impossible for our God. And so I start believing it, and we start dating and things like that. And eventually I have to tell him, which was really hard. I kind of lied about some things. Like I said, I was a huge work in progress. I was a hot mess. Lied about some stuff and just kind of stirred up drama. But man, that was a mess. I'm telling you, God is so good.
Listen
Look,
to
I'm
this
telling
message.
you. Oh man. Yeah. Man, it's sometimes, it's like, when I think about these things, it's like I'm watching a movie of some other person, you know, just with how far he's transformed my life. You know, so anyways, we go through a rough spell because just, you know, like I said, Sterling's not going to play games. You know, he's not going to play the games, you know, not going to do that. And he loves me. He did love me, but he just put his foot down. And so we took some time apart, but eventually, you know, the Lord did some things in me as I was on my own, and then we were brought back together. But Sterling's thing has always been, you know, what does God say about it? You know, he's always been that way. You know, what does God say? You know, what is God saying? What does he say about this? What does the word say? He's always been that way, which can be, I remember at times, very frustrating for me. You know, that's kind of annoying. Like, I just want to vent, or I just want to do this, or I want to sit in my mess, you know. But he's always been firm on that, very steady, where I was like doing like this, very double-minded.
I do like steady.
Yeah. We get married. And
yeah, that did happen.
That did happen. Back in 2008, that did happen. Yeah, God was good. God was good. And I was in a really great place, you know, then. But people started putting things in our hands, like the Supernatural Childbirth book by Jackie Mize. And also another thing that was really instrumental in building up my faith was the Faith Study Guide by Kenneth E. Hagin. And I just ate that up. And as I was doing that, I remember the Lord telling me the names of our children. Okay, and so their names are Lily Bell and Oliver Oscar. He gave us the names of 2 children.
And a bonus fry.
And a bonus fry, but that came later.
Mm-hmm.
A bonus fry?
Yeah. So the bonus fries, when you get a bag of fries and you get a container of fries, they put it in a bag. And so you pull out the container of fries and you eat your fries, but then you look in the bag, there's another fry. And you're like, woo, bonus fry. And so we have a third baby, or a third child. Her name's Trinity Faith.
We learned that from Jim Gaffigan.
Mm-hmm.
The bonus fry.
Mm-hmm.
Not as essential for the reading as the Supernatural Childbirth.
Yeah.
Different schools.
But there has been, you know, so we have their names. And I remember back in 2016, he told me to start nesting for the blessing. And that's why we have a nursery. And that's a place that we go and we sit and we enjoy. And I even, you know, the Lord told me, you know, a year or so ago to go in there and imagine the babies in there, imagine our children in there and tell them stories. And so I do that, you know, I just do that. I'm led by the Spirit of God just to tell them stories.
But for a young lady, those are 2 tough things.
Yeah.
You know, to be, as far as like that, feel very much attached to your identity.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah,
the
come
just terms,
Mhm.
you know, broken and tainted,
Oh, yes.
you know. And if someone believes that is who they are, you know, that doesn't set you in the best trajectory.
No.
For people that don't know that Jesus is the healer, or don't understand faith, I think sometimes it's, you know, and you have circumstances that you're going through, and people ask questions, and you answer them honestly. You know, people ask, you know, how long you guys been married? You have any kids yet? Not yet. You know, are you guys planning on having kids? Yeah. You know, you know, and even sometimes it's like, well, when you think you're gonna have kids, and it's like, well, we're expecting, and it's like, oh, how far along is she? And it's like, well, it's really, I don't know. You know, and so it's for some of them, it's like, man, this is the only people I know that's been expecting kids for 12 years.
Yeah, there's just this peace that I have, this joy that I have. You know, we've had so many prophetic words that just, you know, blow my mind. I have a picture that's in our bedroom that someone drew. It's me, and I have a baby bump, and his mohawk's up, and he's just holding, and, you know, it's a powerful picture. And, you know, we see those things and have those things from people, just confirmation. But we have the word of the Lord, and he has spoken so many times, and his word comes alive. That word, be it unto me according to your word, that Mary says, you know, that's just come alive in me, and it's his living word. And so we're just excited about these babies, and, you know, we're not striving. There's, you know, I've spent a lot of my life striving in performance and trying to be perfect, and, you know, I just am resting in him. I'm resting. I have a restimony.
You have a restimony.
So we're pumped. Yeah. I remember being at the conference. Joanne Moody was preaching that message on imagination, and the Lord took me on a journey, and I just started imagining, and I thought it was myself. You know, I saw what I thought was myself out in the field of wildflowers, and I was picking wildflowers, and I just started to sing, you know, I'm out in the field, you know, picking wildflowers. I can't remember the melody. You know, I'm running, skipping with you, and in my imagination, the girl, I just saw her backside, but she turns to me, and then I see myself looking at my daughter, who's out in the field picking me wildflowers. And then I'm like, you know, and then Joanne Moody, she's like, show him more, Lord, more, Lord. And so I'm like, yes, Lord, show me more. Because a lot of times, you know, we have their names. God's given us their names. I see their faces as babies, like all the time.
We've got baby clothes.
We got baby clothes. We have
diapers,
everything. People have given. You guys have no idea, like all the clothes.
But this is where it stretched you, and this is where
it stretched me. She said, Lord, give him more. And so I just started imagining more. And then I saw her. I saw Lily Bell. I saw us teaching her how to ride a bike.
Yeah, we like to ride bikes.
I saw us teaching her how to ride a bike. And then the Lord showed me, you know, you teaching her how to drive a car, because I don't think I want to do that. You teaching her how to drive a car. And then I saw her graduating from high school. And then I saw her, you know, walking down the aisle. And then I saw her giving birth to her first grandbaby. I saw that, you know, he gave me that. He's showing me what he's doing, what's already been done. And so, you know, I'm just so thankful. And these are the things. And sometimes people come up to me, like at baby showers, because I go to baby showers, I rejoice, you know, I get gifts. And
it's good. Good place to plant some seed.
Yeah. Sometimes people are just like, you know, they almost like, you know, feel like they have to, you know, like, oh, no, you know, I'm the first one. God is so good. And, you know, I mean, it's like, I know, you know, I have his word. I have his word, and it is so real to me. And so real, like as real as if I was holding the babies right now. And just, honestly, you know, even I love all of this. It's so great, but he is my treasure. He has taken me so far and turned my life around and transformed me and cleansed me and made me new. But I just so enjoy him. I so enjoy him. He is the best. And even though, like, for a long time, I just was so obsessed with getting these babies. I want these babies. Yes, I want the babies. But I even idolized that. But I fell in love with him. You know, he's just been drawing me with his kindness, with his love. And I just fell in love with him. And I just love him. I love him. I love him so much. And so I'm at this place where he's my first love. You know, he's my first love. Yes, he's promised us these things. But, oh, he's my first love. He's my treasure. He is my joy. So good.
But just like with a car or a boat or a house, you know, I know a kid's different than a car, a boat, or a house.
Yeah.
Even though sometimes they cost the same amount.
Yeah.
But if that is what you think is going to fulfill you,
no.
You know, I understand that it is fulfilling in a certain way to teach people. And I understand it's fulfilling in a certain way even to exercise dominion and be successful in business into in these other spheres.
Right.
You know, and I understand it's fulfilling to be a parent, but none of those things, you know, can bring you what he is meant to fill.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it can't bring you the happiness that, you know, that comes only with him. Yeah, and he had to deal with those things in me, you know. I just feel like he had to deal with that stuff, you know, because it's been a journey. And I was just telling Sterling the other day, just, you know, I'm not, you know, if I had the ability to get pregnant at 16 years old, that I wouldn't be sitting here today.